Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Steve Alexander from MSP Ignite. Those of you on the call that are a member of our peer group certainly know. The rest of our guests may know a little bit about MSP Ignite, and we'll certainly be happy to take questions later from you. But in our meetings, we obviously speak about cybersecurity quite a bit. Almost every single meeting, there are a handful of members or half the members that bring up Sophos and all the great work they're doing. So we're fortunate to have had a few friends. I have some old friends at Sophos that I reached out to and asked them to put this on. This is meant to be an informative webinar. It's also meant to be an interactive webinar. So if you look down at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. Click that, it'll open up a panel. Feel free to put any questions out there. As I have a chance, as I can interrupt, Erick Kalseth will be presenting with us today. I'll certainly try and answer your questions. And if not, we'll reach out to you after the webinar. But feel free to use that. You will be muted. Everyone will be muted during the call. And with that, I'm happy to have been reacquainted with an old friend from 7 or 8 years ago now, Erick Kalseth, who's going to join us and present some materials on Sophos, as well as the state of the industry as it pertains to cybersecurity. Erick, it's all yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. Again, it's great to reconnect with you as well. I seem to be struggling with my clicker here. Let me see if I can. There we go. Okay, so as we all know, as MSPs, we are charged with an extraordinary level of trust. And complicating things is the mere fact that as MSPs, we're now being targeted as a means into our small SMB customer environments. And the consequences of a breach at our level can affect so many different far-reaching areas, whether it be legal liability, certainly reputation, and lost revenue, right? My name is Erick Kalseth, and again, good afternoon. I am certainly excited to be able to speak with you. I am the Sophos MSP account executive for the region, and I am charged with taking care of our MSP partners in the central US. And today I like to talk a little bit about the state of the cybersecurity landscape as we know it, and dive into a little bit more about what we can do to combat the threats that we're facing, right? I would like to open it up to at the very end for any final thoughts and Q&A, but as Steve mentioned, if there are topics or conversations that come up throughout the presentation, certainly feel free to leverage the Q&A function, and Steve, interrupt me as you see fit here. But in respect of everybody's time, I'd like to kind of stick to this agenda here. We'll talk a little bit, very briefly, about Sophos and your team over here that are dedicated to your success. And also the diving right into the security ecosystem, talk about the threats, the techniques, the tactics, and the procedures that the bad guys are using. And we'll go into some very specific examples, and then spend some time talking about what we can do to better equip ourselves and ultimately our customers. Okay. So very briefly, as it relates to you as a MSP partner, Sophos has been around for a very long time. We're a strong, stable company. We're growing in all the right directions. We've got Gartner leading products on both the network side of the house, so you think firewalls, and also our endpoint as well. We do something very unique here in the fact that we are recognized as leaders in both network and the endpoint side. And we continue to heavily reinvest in those products, right? Again, strong, stable company, not going anywhere for any time soon, right? We are also a channel company, a channel-only company. So every single dollar of revenue that we generate has gone through our partners, which means you've got a very dedicated local team, as well as an enterprise team and an MSP team that are all dedicated to your success, right? We've got also a global research facility that operates 24 hours, 365, that generates information that we use to not just educate our partners, but also update our products. More recently, about 4 years ago, we had actually introduced a MSP program that was really built for the MSP model, right? Monthly billing, co-managed IT, multi-tenant environments, things like that. And we launched the program about 4 years ago, and it has been by far and away the most successful program in the 34-year history of Sophos. I wanted to share just some graphs that we had presented to our senior management team at the beginning of last year, just to demonstrate really what this growth looks like. And I don't say this to brag, I say this as an opportunity to thank the partners that are on the call today that are currently Sophos Flex customers, protecting their customers with our technologies. This is a function of your success, right? So I'd like to say thank you to those that are currently contributing to this. And to those that have maybe not made the leap yet or are still thinking about it, come on in, the water's warm. It's been a wildly successful program. And again, it's been a function of our partners' growth. Oops, going back too quick here. Let me slide it back a little bit. So you have a dedicated MSP team that would work right alongside your local in-territory team here. So I'll give you a second to kind of find yourself on the map here. My counterpart, Matt Bernanke, who's based in the Los Angeles region, manages the partner relationships out west. I also have a colleague, Travis Simmons, who is based out of our Burlington, Massachusetts office, and he manages the relationships on the East Coast. If you do have questions or you're interested in joining the MSP program, feel free to reach out to us, and our alias is here, West MSP, Central, and East MSP at sophos.com. And just so you know who you're speaking with when you do reach out to us, these are our pictures here. Right. So again, if you find that this is a program that's going to fit your business model and you're interested in learning more, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to us. Okay. Enough about us. Now, really, let's talk about the evolution of cybercrime as it relates to time, right? When you think about way back in the beginning, it really follows a model of any traditional product that becomes a great hit, right, or a large-scale adoption, right? It starts off as a hobby. You've got what were previously known as script kiddies. We're just kind of messing around and playing with malware and developing things just to see if they could. And the next step kind of became somebody figured out a way to commoditize that and then started making a little bit of money on it, which then introduced things like efficiencies and ecosystems, automations, deployments, things like that, which really lowered the barrier of entry into this, and I'll say it in quotes here, marketplace, right? You don't have to be a sophisticated hacker in order to be a sophisticated hacker anymore. Right, which then led to industrialization. And really today, this is a very profitable, very well-run, very streamlined business model, right? The only problem with it is it's illegal, right? This is, you've got things like malware as a service. You've got rentable ransomware that you can essentially purchase or rent out. If you as a hacker are struggling with a deployment, you can call into a help desk and someone will walk you through how do you automate this attack. And if you are a victim of a cybercrime and you don't know how to pay your ransom, you can call in a number and someone will walk you through how to purchase Bitcoin. So they have become very industrious. And again, today, this is a very profitable business model, which is only going to increase as time goes on. Right, so if you look at our global research facility, Sophos Labs, again, they are analyzing 450,000 new malware samples every day, right? 3/4 of these we're never gonna see again. So if you are expecting your traditional antivirus to be able to keep up with 450,000 samples every single day, it's going to lead to trouble, right? There's just no way that any vendor, any signature-based antivirus is going to be able to keep up with this type of volume every day. Right? To make matters even worse, the bad guys or the cyber criminals have figured out new and more ingenious ways onto a network. Right? If you go back to 2017, it was really a big spike in vulnerabilities or exploits. Right? For those that are on the call that may not know what that is, essentially what the bad guys were doing is they would wait for a patch to be issued. They would then download the patch, reverse engineer it, figure out what vulnerability was attempting to be fixed, and then they would write code or leverage code to exploit that legitimate vulnerability. So you can own a machine or a network simply due to a flaw in Microsoft Office or Notepad or any particular vendor legitimate software that would belong on that machine. So again, if you're expecting your signature-based antivirus solution to be able to protect against exploits or vulnerabilities, again, this is going to be something that you need to take a closer look at, because this is a very clever way into a network, a very clever way to get around a traditional antivirus solution. Right, so to say that the threat landscape has shifted is probably a statement in the past, right? A lot of security vendors will use that phrase, and again, it has. The problem for managed service providers is that the customer expectations really have not, right? You as an MSP, you're expected to protect against the unknown, right? It's 450,000 new samples. This essentially is disposable single-use ransomware at this point. Tomorrow there will be a brand new set of 450,000 to choose from. So you are expected to protect against things that have never been seen before in the wild. Stopping ransomware. Again, this is a very popular tool that cyber criminals will use because it is very profitable. 54% said that they were hit. I would argue that number is probably a lot higher. But again, as a managed service provider, you're expected to stop ransomware. And this goes beyond just having a strong backup strategy. And really the last piece is kind of the understatement of the year, if you want to think about it. You're expected to deny the attacker, right? Not just one particular avenue that they may approach from, not just one particular side of the network that they come in from. You're expected to keep them off of that network altogether, right? And this is, again, much easier said than done. But really, it goes back to these expectations have not shifted, but yet the landscape that we are competing against these cyber criminals in certainly has. Right, so we'll talk a little bit about ransomware here, right? There are countless numbers and families out there: WannaCry, NotPetya, Ryuk, Apocalypse, SamSam, CryptoLocker, Bad Rabbit, and there are a bunch of other names I'm sure have come up since this morning. And really, we're still talking about this because it is so effective and so profitable to do so, right? And when you look at really where it began, again, this is kind of a screenshot of a early type of ransomware where they were extorting money from a victim and claiming that they had downloaded some illegal content. Pay us money and your fine will go away, right? They've since evolved this ransomware into many different varying strains and tactics here. More recently, they would put a timer on this, right? So create a little bit of urgency where you only have this amount of time to pay this ransom, otherwise it's going to double, right? I've seen variants where we'll give you the key for free, but you have to infect 5 of your friends, right? So there's a bunch of different variations of ransomware, and this is continuing to evolve because, again, as we get better, so will they. This is also, they started using Bitcoin as a form of anonymity versus gift cards, which would previously have been leveraged. Again, varying strains, but again, at the end of the day, these are all what they're looking to do. They're locking your files up and they're charging you a ransom to get them back. This is one I added recently. This is kind of a clever one here. This was maybe not as malicious as some of the other ones, but basically the files have been encrypted. But don't worry, I just want you to play this game for an hour and we'll give you your key back, or if you don't have time, here's the key. Right, so this was kind of a funny addition to the kind of where ransomware is going. But again, it really demonstrates that they can go any direction, right? And when you think about a new organization will fall victim every 14 seconds this year, right? And that's only going to accelerate as we get into the future. 850 million ransomware infections were caught, which means that, again, I would argue that number is probably a lot higher. And the Internet of Things is going to change all kinds of landscapes and threat vectors that we as providers are going to be expected to protect against, right? So let's talk about everybody's favorite topic, right? End users. right? And why are we talking about end users? Why are we still talking about end users? Well, the reality is there are so many ways that a end user can be duped into giving away credentials or access to a system. And there are so many of them, right? This is not just a one individual targeted attack, although there are many whaling instances or spear phishing attacks that would go after an individual. Really, it works because there hasn't been a strong answer to it yet, right? It really becomes a numbers game, right? Where you will fish out many different users, and the expectation is that you will get a small percentage of that sample to actually click on the account or click on the phishing link. And oftentimes it's not. It is not the person in the trenches or the receptionist or the accounting person. It's going to be somebody with a C attached to their title. And again, we are expected to protect them against this, right? So really, it just becomes a numbers game. And when you look at phishing as a tactic, it has evolved very quickly from the days of misspellings and poorly worded phrases and bad screenshots of particular legitimate sites. And it really, I challenge those of you guys on the call today to pick out which one of these is the phishing attack and which one is the legitimate one, right? And I honestly haven't looked yet, so I don't even know. But it really looks identical, and you can't expect an end user to not expect this to be legitimate, especially if they are, if it's timely in their day and they're expecting a reply from PayPal in this case. Right, but basically the game here is to get a user to submit their information for an attacker to use for malicious purposes, right? So again, you click on your thing, you hit save, and then oh, there's an error. Let's confirm this now. No big deal. It's a big blue button. I'll click on it. No big deal. Let's just fill out some personal information, date of birth, address, again, all pretty common stuff. And what's really nice to know here is their security is our top priority. That's really comforting to know that. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out this information, click continue. And these guys, in this case, are really going for the gold here. They're going to try and get credit card information as well. Again, because PayPal is a banking site, right? I have a credit card. I need to confirm it so that I'm good to go. And again, that information is stored and encrypted on servers and not shared with merchants. It's very comforting to know. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too, right? And again, this happens day in and day out. And again, it's a numbers game. They will expect 1 to 2 to 3% to actually click on this, and it really just takes one. Right. So now that you're onto the network, and more particularly, you're onto an endpoint. As an attacker, you've got some decisions to make, right? Do I want to extract data from the endpoint? Do I want to stay on the endpoint? Typically, they're patched more often. There may be next-gen protections on there in the firewall. In worst case, you can just re-image them, right? So typically, the objective of an attacker is to get where the data is, get where the crown jewels are stored. And again, that's where where servers would come in. They're typically patched once a month, maybe once or twice a year. There's maybe in some cases some basic signature AV agent that's sitting on them. But really, this is where the gold is. So if we're going to take an action on this objective, this is where I want to go. I want to get onto the servers. And again, this is typically what we would see happen in a ransomware event at a customer side. It's a little different on the MSP side. But again, it's really all about efficiencies, right? So these guys are business people. They're looking for the biggest bang for their buck. They're going to attack the locations that will deliver that biggest bang. And I do want to pause here just for a question, any questions that may come out or comments. Steve, were there anything in the chat that?
Well, one thing did come up, Eric, and it's not necessarily pertaining to the content right now, but it is interesting. So I'm gonna jump in with it. Someone asked if you had any comments about Thoma Bravo making an offer for what's going on, and I felt like smiling, saying, yeah, what's going on is that the people that are paid an awful lot of money to evaluate companies are seeing our industry as very attractive, right? Not just Sophos, that's great. And it was a big number, so it was really great. But it's happening all over our industry because of what you were talking about. I feel is what's driving the investment into our industry. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. As an employee of Sophos, I think we're certainly excited about the prospects of this acquisition. I think it's going to do good things for the industry. I think it's going to do good things for us. Beyond that, I wouldn't be comfortable commenting any further than that, but I would reiterate your points, right? I think security and MSP markets are very attractive right now because they are very high growth industries. And again, folks much smarter than I have decided that this was something that they wanted in their repertoire, and we're certainly excited about the possibilities.
I agree. I also look back at the slides you put up for the phishing, the cartoon on the phishing, and say, the biggest problem we still have today, right, years later, is that C-level probably aren't participating in the training that we're giving, right? Because they're saying, I don't need to be bothered with this. And then they're the ones that are really the prime suspects out there for opening the door.
Yep. And again, there's a human element to that too, right? So I'm the owner of the company. I want access to everything. I don't need access to everything. I shouldn't have access to everything, but I'm the owner of the company. I want all rights. And again, that would be a security strategy conversation to have with that individual. But a lot of times they don't understand that they are the target, right? There are people that will stalk them on Facebook and watch their LinkedIn updates and see that they were just in Orlando at a security conference or at an MSP conference and spoof the hotel email back to them saying, here is your receipt from your 4-night stay and XYZ day. And again, that would be a weaponized document in that case. But again, very specific, very targeted phishing campaigns against these individuals. So yeah, I would agree that they are still the weakest link, and unless we do something to change that, we'll continue to be.
Yep. I mean, listen, people overall are the weakest link, right? And it's just the higher the level person, the less likely they are to pay attention to what they're doing, what they're reading, or anything else.
Yep, absolutely. So for those on the call, if you guys had guessed servers as the crown jewels of an environment, you would be correct, right? And that's oftentimes what we see folks targeting and unfortunately falling victims to. It sort of is the cross section of two like graphs, right? So you've got your least protected assets and your most valuable data sitting on those assets. And again, that's why if you're a business person in the business of cybercrime, you want your biggest bang. So you're going to go target those servers. Okay.
Ironically, we've got an attendee raising his hand to ask a question, and I'm laughing, saying, well, as the president of the company, they don't give me the rights to know how to unmute the person, even on this call. So, Joe, if you could type it in the Q&A or the chat window, we'll be happy to try and address it for you.
Fantastic. So I'm going to change things up a little bit and talk about some things that have been relevant to MSPs specifically. And I'm going to reference a few different examples here. But really, supply chain attacks have become kind of the preferred mode. And again, these are not new tools. These are not new next-gen variants of ransomware that do something different than the previous generations. Really, these are just different strategy into a network. And again, if you think about it from a Sun Tzu perspective or a military perspective, you don't attack the tip of the spear, right? You're going to attack the logistics and the supply chains that support that tip of the spear. And again, this has become a very popular method of delivery. And when you think about why, if you look at a Fortune 100 or Fortune 5000 company, they are going to have a tremendous amount of security budget and a tremendous amount of dedicated security IT staff, right? This is in addition to the rest of their security support staff. These are just dedicated security professionals. So you look at these types of organizations, they've got very large numbers of support staff, right? When you start moving down into the 1,000 to 5,000 employees, and you move even further down that supply chain, the dedicated IT security staff essentially disappear, right? So if I'm a hacker, again, I'm a businessman, I need to make sure that I am going to have a high degree of success and a low degree of risk. If I'm going to attack Boeing or Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're going to have a tremendous amount of staff dedicated to stopping me. Also, if I end up attacking these guys and get caught, which I most certainly will, there's a very high degree of likelihood that somebody's going to be knocking on my door and I'm going to jail, right? But if you move down a little bit, you see the small business space, very small security budgets, very limited technical IT security staff, and frankly, there's a low risk of capture, right? If I attack Boeing, I'm almost certainly going to get caught, but if I attack a fabricating company in the suburbs of Chicago that just makes parts that other companies use to make bigger parts, there's a good chance that I'm probably not going to get caught and still find a high degree of success. Unfortunately for MSPs, this is also the space that we play in, right? So I feel like it's our jobs to communicate this message to these small business owners that still to this day feel like I'm too small, nobody's going to want my data. That's kind of a fallacy from 5, 10, 12 years ago that probably even wasn't true then. They are very much at risk here, and it's simply because of the space that they fall in. Small security budgets and a very low risk of being captured. So again, if you were to, go ahead, Steve, sorry.
I think the interesting thing there is how much of a target our audience has become, right? I mean, the MSPs themselves have become such an audience. And I'd say actually the vendor side as well, not so much to get into a Sophos or anyone else that sells to the MSPs, but to look for an opening into the MSPs, right? And stick with the small business attack, but get a bigger bang for your buck by getting into 20, 40, 50, 100 different small businesses all at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if we take a look at a very typical supply chain attack, right? You've got your enterprises, this could be a fill in the name, right? Doesn't matter. And then you've got their support vendors, right? So basically the goal here, again, just to kind of illustrate this, would be to attack the vendor, right? This could be a catering company, right? This could be a company that makes parts that makes your parts bigger, right? Or faster. This could be a software vendor that you would use to manage your accounting, right? This could be any number of vendors that are supplying this enterprise, and that you can compromise one of them, you have a toehold into a nice enterprise level account. And from here, you can get really whatever you can get your hands on. In this example, it was customer information, right? So very easy to do once you start attacking the vendors that are supporting the tip of the spear in my example, right? And for those that are on the call and recognize this slide or recognize this attack, this is in fact the target attack. Very lightened up version of the target attack, but essentially that was really all it took. And you might be asking yourself, well, Eric, why are you talking about an attack that happened 5, 6 years ago that's been studied and analyzed to death? Why are you still talking about it, right? Or maybe you're saying, I don't really sell to Target. That's not my customer ideal in the SMB space. This really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But if you think back at this vendor supply chain, again, this was the MSP. This was a small business customer that potentially was managed by an MSP, right? The other example here that I would say is swap out the word enterprise 1 and 2 with RMM and your MSP name, right? You're very vulnerable to these types of attacks because, again, you have the keys to the kingdom to many different customers' environments. So why would you attack 50 small business customers when you can attack one MSP? Right, so just to kind of reiterate this, right, taking a look at an infected machine, again, this is a very simple example, but again, command and control center, getting connection, establishing a foothold, and then expanding laterally, owning machines as you move along. Again, this essentially was the target attack, but this could very easily be an MSP attack. Very easily. The blueprint had been set 5-6 years ago, and it's now being repurposed and reused against MSPs, right? So the idea of supply chain attacks is something that definitely needs to be paid close attention to. Right, again, there's a lot of news and a lot of information on it. Nobody's safe, right? Even Sesame Street is being hacked here. So pay close attention, right? Take care of your house. Right. And most recently, again, MSPs are being targeted. I actually received an email about 30 minutes before this call launched with an MSP that had been attacked by ransomware. And I didn't have time to edit the names and protect the innocent yet, so I didn't want to add it here, but it is literally happening in real time here. So definitely something to pay very close attention to. Right, so we kind of understand the whys, but why are they successful? These are folks that we trust in the industry that are basically calling us out and saying, we're not, this is the ugly truth, not the beautiful lie, right? We tend to not have the same security standards for ourselves that we do for our customers, right? We tend to maybe bend a few security rules in the interests of speed and efficiency here. And the bad guys know this, and they're taking full advantage of that. Right, so I think it's obviously vital to secure your own networks, right? These are our businesses that we are owning and running, and again, it goes back to the risk and trust that you're managing on behalf of your customers. Right, so not all doom and gloom, but I do want to pause again. Were there any comments or questions, Steve?
No, I have nothing new in there at all.
Okay. All right, so I can keep going here. So again, it's a scary time to be a managed service provider, understanding now that we are certainly under attack and why, but what can we do? Right, there's some basic level things that don't require massive purchasing products and things like that. Do some diet and exercise, right? So we've seen this wheel before. Protecting your process, your technologies, your people. Layered defenses is something that we hear a lot of. I would comment that any particular product that you are purchasing, whether it's a firewall, whether it's ours or somebody else's, any information security protection asset that you are considering purchasing, make sure that it fits into your cybersecurity strategy, and it is not your cybersecurity strategy. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, Eric. And I'm wondering how many MSPs you talk to that actually have a strategy or a position when it comes to security other than these are our tools, right? So you're obviously out there selling tool stack and talking to people about their tool stack, but there's so much more to what we have to do. And I'm wondering how many MSPs out there actually are thinking about what their security profile is, what's their posture in the industry, and what are they doing with their clients that is not tool related, educational related, not just the security awareness training that you guys provide, but it goes much deeper than that. And I'm just curious, if you come across that a lot where people are talking to you about more than just the tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some really good vendors that service our space that have very strong solutions. I would consider us to be one of those, but I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch. But I would say, to the comment about the cybersecurity strategy, have that in place, have that conversation with your team first before you take a sales call or before you see a demo on a particular product. And if that product fits into your cybersecurity strategy without introducing an unfair amount of risk, then maybe you explore going into that. But I do hear a lot of partners that will lean on one particular technology, right? I have a SOC, okay, but that doesn't really do much for prevention, right? So that's great that you have a SOC, but maybe there's some opportunities and challenges with just that alone. So again, I would say that SOC is good if that makes sense for your cybersecurity strategy, but it's going to be a colossal waste of resources and time and frustration if it's not. So identify that strategy first, and then entertain products and solutions that fit that. Now, one of the things that Sophos has done very well is, again, you kind of hear the defense in depth analogy quite often. And one of the things that we do differently is our layers or our depth protection packages can actually speak to each other. So you can have a email filtering solution that can talk to your firewall and identify a risky user based on certain profiles that they click on links a lot, and then manage that security posture a little bit differently there, right? So that's just kind of an example of how these products could work into a strategy. Right, so again, really what we believe here at Sophos is it starts with the strongest protection, right? It's now the norm to be a cyber attack victim, right? 2/3 of the folks that we surveyed had fallen to a cyber attack, right? IT teams really lack the visibility into what we call attacker dwell time, right? So in this case, 13 hours on average to discover that someone has been on your network, right? IT teams can't plug the security gaps because they simply don't know where they are. Right. And then when you look at lost time, 48 days a year investigating non-issues. That's a month and a half that you paid someone to investigate something that was not an issue in the first place. Right. That's a tremendous amount of hard costs there. Right. And when you look at 4 out of 5 organizations are struggling with the detection and response capability. Right? Half of organizations just can't utilize the tool that they've already purchased, whether it be something that they bought on their own through an RMM solution. There's just not enough security expertise to go around. Right, so put this in terms of dollars and cents here. Again, there's a lot of pressure that we're facing, not just on time, but on expertise. 7 days a month, right? So those, forget the events that were non-issues. You're again costing someone 7 days, a quarter of the month, fixing computers that aren't affected, right? And when you look at how MSPs are profitable, it's really through efficiencies, right? So the opportunity cost of somebody that's fixing a not just a ransom computer, but just a nuisance malware machine. A third of that salary is spent fixing computers that could have been avoided. So again, our approach is to have the strongest protection up front and mitigate the risk from there. Right, so again, we talk about layers in security, right? So defense against ransomware, right? It kind of sounds like it's trivial, but the best place to stop it is to prevent it from even getting on the machines in the first place. So you've got solutions like anti-exploit technologies, web security, phishing would sort of fall into this category as well. So really the goal here is to prevent that from even being delivered. Right, but in the off chance that it gets past that, it's good to have something that is looking at the behavioral analytics of ransomware, right? So identifying that behavior and quarantining it before it runs. But in the off chance that it does get through that too, being able to stop malicious encryption and reverse that damage through a anti-ransomware technology is a very strong, very effective response to ransomware, right? And again, we have a product here at Sophos called Intercept X, for those of you that are not aware of that has been very successful in the real world, preventing these types of attacks. So I want to pause here just for any questions or comments as we go along here.
I don't know about everyone else. I'm still sitting here stunned at how many days a month are spent or hours a month are spent investigating what turns out to be non-issues.
A month and a half. That's a lot of time. Yeah. It's scary. And then you add on another week a month fixing things that were broken, yeah, it's compelling. It really is.
Well, it really challenges the historical all-you-can-eat model of an MSP, right? It's almost impossible to still be that way.
Yeah, yeah, and I think in the past, a lot of MSPs would treat antivirus as a software that is managed on a machine, very similar to Microsoft Office 365 or any accounting software that was QuickBooks, for example. And I think that has shifted, and it will continue to shift into more of a security-centric package that MSPs would offer that frankly have the right to charge quite a bit more for, because again, you're assuming quite a bit of risk.
Yep. We've got a question that popped up related to the firewall solution you have for Azure. Don't know if that's something you can go into, but obviously cloud-based firewall.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a virtual firewall offering that you would be able to leverage. Ironically, next month, December, we're going to be introducing a virtual firewall as a service. So you would essentially be able to purchase the base license and the monthly subscription under one SKU, paid for monthly in arrears, right? So whatever your usage was for that particular month is what you would essentially be charged for. Right, but we could certainly have a deeper conversation on that offline. All right, so here's my shameless sales pitch at this point here. Really what we've done is really adopted a strategy of taking products that historically on their own have been very good at being a firewall, or being an email filtering solution, or being a endpoint solution, or mobile device management solution, and taking them and put them in an ecosystem that allows them to all communicate, right? So you can now coordinate your defenses automatically to respond to a threat, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming from a firewall, but an endpoint can make a firewall smarter, right? When you look at how we go about inspecting encrypted traffic, right? You can have a endpoint that potentially gets compromised out in the field, come back into your customer's network. That firewall will recognize that it is not healthy and immediately restrict access, right? Cut off all access to the internet, revoke the encryption keys if you have encryption deployed, and allow that endpoint to self-remediate. And once it does become healthy again, that firewall can reintroduce it back onto the network. So really this strategy is having these layers talk to each other, right? And we call it synchronized security. From a MSP management perspective, all of these products are also located in a MSP-friendly multi-tenant dashboard. So you're not having to go back and forth between 8 different portals and 8 different partner programs and 8 different vendor reps to be able to figure out what's going on under duress of an attack at a customer site or multiple customer sites, right? So all of these products can be managed from one place that we call Sophos Central here. And again, it's free for you as a partner to use. And all of our licensing on these products is done based on actual usage in arrears, right? So you're not on the hook for a monthly minimum or anything like that. But really the idea here is that we've got our products that are all layers, if you will, all working together to auto-respond to the sophisticated attacks that we are currently under attack from, right? If you take a look at one particular product, in this case, Sophos Intercept X Advanced, this is really one of the stronger products that we offer. It's been recognized by real-world folks dealing with ransomware as early as late as this morning, all the way back through to third-party analysts that have tested this. This has become a really strong response and frankly, lightning in a bottle for our MSP partners that have been taking advantage of this. And really what this is, again, layers of protection on a particular endpoint or on a server, right? So we start with the known threats, or what we would call the foundational security, right? This is a signature-based antivirus engine. There's no need to run a threat through a machine learning algorithm if we already know that it's bad. We've got a signature for it. We've seen it a long time ago. Let's just knock that low-hanging fruit out. But really the idea here is that we can take an endpoint and shrink that attack surface down so that it is manageable from a risk perspective. So you've got features like web control, content filtering. You've got device control, so you can lock down USB sticks from being inserted. behavioral analytics like malicious traffic detection and intrusion detection. This is all included in what we would call our foundational layer on that endpoint. Right. We also have a technology that's called CryptoGuard. This is probably the most popular feature of Intercept X Advanced, but certainly one of them, right? And really what this is this is a behavioral-based analysis of a file, right? So as a file is being interacted with, whether it's ransomware or not, if it does become infected, we have the ability to identify that behavior and then kill that process. And then through a proprietary copying system that we've developed with Microsoft, we can actually roll those files back to their previously unencrypted state, not relying on shadow copy in any way, shape, or form. Very popular talking point, right? A lot of MSPs are going to take this one particular component of Intercept X and really do a lot of good with it. But again, just another layer, right? We also have unknown executables, right? So we had leveraged a technology or an algorithm that had been developed actually out of a DARPA-funded project quite a few years ago. They had built a really nice machine learning algorithm that had very high success rates and very low false positives, actually turned it into a company. This company was called Invincia, and they had been servicing the Fortune 100s of the world, right? So very high-grade enterprise quality machine learning technology that Sophos had purchased a few years ago and built this into Intercept X. Right? So again, you don't have to rely on signatures alone anymore, because you do have a very high quality Defense Department grade algorithm that is determining if things are good or bad. But then you also have these exploits, right? Which is the techniques that are used to gain access to systems that are software that belongs on those machines, right? It is legitimate software that just happens to have a vulnerability that is being exploited. So by focusing on the techniques, we can identify those attempts and again block them and alert the MSP that there was an action on that endpoint. And again, these are all on the same agent. These are all on the same SKU, and they are all bundled together, right? So really what we would call the power of the plus essentially is just layering protections on the endpoints and on the servers. Right, so I'll pause here for any questions if there are any.
Hey, Eric, I'm curious, the portal that you have that ties all your different layered security solutions together is pretty awesome. How does it interact with other tools out there, whether it be PSA or RMM tools on the market?
Yeah, so
as well.
Yeah, great question, Steve. So our Sophos Central, which is the console that you will be managing your multi-tenant customers and your Sophos products from, is designed to work. We went with the approach of a vendor agnostic when it comes to the RMMs and PSA tools. So we do have an open API. There are some solutions that we integrate tighter with just due to the nature of their structure, but our goal and effort that has been put forth in 2019 has been to build a more native integration with the RMM tools, right? So we certainly can work with most of the popular RMM solutions out there. We do have tighter native integrations with some other than others, but yeah, we are designed to be able to scale within an RMM solution.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, so briefly about Intercept X, and again, this is probably the unsung hero of Intercept X in my opinion, really is what we call threat cases. Again, this is something that's included in Intercept X, and it really paints the picture and gives you the answer to the question that your customers are going to ask, right? So who did this? What happened? How'd they get in? We understand the why, but how is the more difficult question. And oftentimes you are going to a customer site after an attack with the exact same questions, right? Who was logged? What happened? And maybe it came from email, or perhaps it came from a website. I don't really know. Well, really what you can do with Intercept X is the idea is you're building out threat cases, right? So again, we have our beacon event, which would be the event that Intercept X stepped in and stopped that malicious process from encrypting files and roll back the infected ones. But you can also reverse back in time to see where that root cause was, or where that originating attack started from. So in this case, Sue was logged on to a particular machine. She opened Outlook, it went and did its thing, created some processes and wrote to a few different files. And at one point it became malicious, we determined, and stopped it, right? So this is something that you can take back to your customer, maybe educate Sue a little bit more on potential phishing attacks. You could use this as certainly part of an after analysis or a quarterly business review, but you can also take this information and plug it into your firewall, right? Just to make sure that anybody else on this network is not susceptible to these types of file types. And so incredibly powerful, what I would call force multiplying information that allows you to be much more responsive. Right, so as I said, Intercept X, again, I say it's the best protection that you have available in the world. Admittedly, I work for Sophos, so I'm supposed to say that, but a lot of the third-party analysts that we tend to value their opinion agree, right? I can give you countless stories of managed service providers, especially this past summer, that had witnessed in real time their environments under attack, and Intercept X, frankly, performed exactly the way that we had advertised it to. So, again, it's not just me saying it's the best protection. A lot of folks, including maybe some on this call, and certainly our peers, would agree. Right. So, if you're interested in joining our MSP program, again, it is free to join. Sophos.com/MSP. There are no monthly commitments. So if you are interested in exploring a particular product set or multiple product sets, again, I would encourage you to sign up. The licensing is flexible. So again, it's going to be based on your usage in arrears. So if you were to deploy 10 units in November, you would see an invoice in December for those 10 units, right? As you scale the licensing, the pricing does become cheaper. So I do want to make a mention of a special promo that Steve and I had worked out. So if you guys mention this webinar, MSP Ignite, to whoever you speak to, if you are interested, you will receive some special discounting on pricing. Okay, so some final thoughts. All right, implement two-factor. Absolutely everywhere, right? I think we learned this, over the past year or so. Not just multi-factor, but two-factor everywhere. Really believe in what you're selling, right? So much so that you would protect your own assets with it. We have a very generous non-for-resale program that is available to our MSP partners. Essentially, you have all of our software at your disposal for free. So Intercept X Advanced. You can deploy it internally for testing or even protect your own house for free. But eat your own dog food, right? Understand what it can and can't do, and again, sell what you believe in. Ensure that your vendor has tamper protection, right? Most do, but not all. Ensure that it is obviously protected from authentication perspective. And again, security is not a piece of software that should be going to the lowest bidder. Right, there's such a huge level of risk and trust that our customers have placed in our hands that it's just need to make sure that you're obviously being healthy, but again, not something that should go to the lowest bidder. And leverage your vendors, right? We are here to support you as our MSP partners. So whether it's data sheets and tools, whether it's campaigns and trainings, whether it's marketing assets or a sales engineer that maybe needs to educate your team on how things are set up, lean on us, right? Lean on all your vendors because we're here to help. We're all here to try to solve the same problem. Lastly, sell the system, right? The security strategy is what's going to sell, right? You're not going to add a mobile device management upsell because you're just trying to add another product, right? If there's a system here, there's a mobile device that's potentially vulnerable, that system is gonna, selling that system will make that deal close a lot faster. And then lastly, differentiate yourselves, right? I think we all struggle with that a little bit, but those are kind of what I would say are a good place to start. But Steve, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to add?
I do. Thank you, Eric. Great presentation. I appreciate the overview. We do have a couple of people asking that are existing Sophos members if the MSP Ignite offer helps them in any way. I'm not sure if you know the answer to that yet or not.
Yeah, I would say reach out to your local team or your dedicated channel account executive for that particular region. If you happen to be in the central, that would be me. But if you're out west, that would be Matt. And if you're on the East Coast, that would be Travis Simmons. East MSP, Central MSP, West MSP at sophos.com. And we'll get you routed to the right group. And yeah, we can definitely see if we can take advantage of that.
Fantastic. Someone else is asking, and someone asked earlier if you didn't see it. We will indeed make the slide deck available, I believe, Eric. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. This is all customer facing. So absolutely.
And we will post the recording of this session up on our YouTube channel, and we'll reach out to everyone that signed up to let them know that it's out there. So thank you guys for asking that. Eric, I love that you added in leverage your vendors and campaigns. I find that the least used tool out there for most MSPs is MDF funds, marketing development funds, where they can actually jump in and get some help, not only in paying for things, but in materials, in collateral materials. And I'm shocked how few take advantage of it.
Yeah, I would even add on to that. A lot of us on the MSP team have come from MSP, Steve. I know you and I go back a few years. But we've all made the mistakes and we've all bumped our heads and we've all kind of learned the hard way. Our sales engineer came from an MSP himself. So we've made a lot of the same mistakes and taken advantage of the same opportunities. So whether it's just bouncing an idea off, we're really here to help. I think that not just a technical side, but leveraging us for information, right? We will routinely bring a security analyst out of the lab and they will speak at your event for free, right? So it's really about supporting our partners and protecting our customers.
That's fantastic and an excellent closing thought. Eric, thank you very much for joining us. For our members and our invited guests, I know I appreciated it and I'm sure they do as well. We will be reaching out to those of you that signed up to talk to you about our offering and Sophos offering. But please feel free to reach out to us anytime with questions, even if it's just questions about where to go in the industry. We're happy to help. Thanks again, Eric, and have a great day, everybody.